Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Don't miss out on our comic book creator interviews, including our monthly Chichester chats with comic book legend DG Chichester, superhero movie brackets in our search for the worst comic book movie of all time, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
Avast me hearties, and welcome once again to Full Stream Ahead. Arrgh, I be your captain, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend and first mate.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozzie, so glad you could join us in a world of sand that gets everywhere. There are those in other places in this galaxy far, far away. And they too are a chapter in the Book of Boba Fett. Chapter 5, Return of the Mandalorian. An unexpected ally emerges. Our director this week is Bryce Dallas Howard. Our writers are, of course, we got Jon Favreau, based on characters by George Lucas. Jon Favreau gets our written by, created by, credit. George Lucas just cashes the check. And Noah Clore, hardest working person in show business this week, gets our staff writer credit. Let me see here. We also get the return of Paz Vizsla, previously only called the Heavy Mandalorian.
And that's Jon Favreau's voice behind that.
That's Jon Favreau, and it is Tate Fletcher's body, I'm guessing. And Joe Osmond
sense.
was the Gonk droid. Yes.
So they broke out the fine china for this one, huh?
Yeah. Well, you know, it is an interesting tale, to say the least. There is a phrase I've heard bandied about, which is actually from Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is, you say, never show a good film in the middle of your bad film. Now that I think Book of Boba Fett has been a bad film.
No, but I know what you
really
mean.
don't. Yeah,
but at the same time, if you have been putting the work in, you've collected all this material, and the one thing that just seems better than everything else just doesn't fit in the narrative you built, you're like, man, but I really want to get it in there. Otherwise, you know.
Well, you know, the problem is, and this is the basic problem, is The Mandalorian is a cowboy show. And is and it's really even more operatic. It's, a spaghetti western. In fact, in this one, we're going to get a lot of shades of that, open prairie, man with no name kind of vibe. We'll get even more of that next week. But here, and it's a cowboy show, but whereas Book of Boba Fett really is kind of a mob show. Book of Boba Fett is a mafia show. It's more like The Godfather than it is, Once Upon a Time in the West. It's very much a tale of how this guy comes back from the war and now he's going to build his little criminal empire. But of course, Jindarin, if I recall his name correctly.
Din
Djarin, yeah. He isn't part of that per se. He is his own Mandalorian on a quest.
Mm-hmm.
And this quest has brought him to where the last, and they even say the last three, that from that entire Mandalorian enclave on his last planet. Only 3 managed to survive, which means men, women, and we saw in the last one that there were like little children Mandalorians running around in that place, and what's his name murdered them all. These last 3 are all that's left, but
so who was the third one? There's the armorer, Paz Vizsla.
There's the armorer, Paz Vizsla, and we never saw who the third person was.
Oh, okay.
Maybe there was one scene where they're in the background, but they don't get a name, they don't get a story credit. They're just
okay.
She just says that now we are just 3, but does say that Jindarin can join their conclave, or
right.
whatever they called it. So, and just jump back. We get the nice little butcher shop massacre there, which is a nice, and it's also neat because it also sort of again gives us this blending. It's that transitional scene from that mob film where you're going into the butcher shop to talk to the guy, and then it just gets all out of hand. And clearly, this is not a take him in alive. It's like, no, I just need the guy's head.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, those trackers they have, what are they tracking?
Yeah, I don't know. Is everybody microchipped?
Yeah, well, it's like I gotta figure it's one of these, and it's one of these weird things. Like if the Force is a real quantifiable object in this universe, then maybe it is just this idea that people have found ways to interact with things, and you can just, once you have someone's bioscan, you can track them anywhere in the galaxy.
That's what I was thinking. Somebody did a 23andMe, and they got into a database, and now you can be found wherever.
Yeah, something's going on in this universe. But anyway, so we get that scene, and then he goes to talk to the person because he knows, he's trying to get the information on where the Mandalorians went after he left them, because he wants to rejoin his people. He finished his task. He let Grogu go, but he's still kind of conflicted about who he is. But he still knows he's a Mandalorian, and he wants to be back on his path because he got really thrown off his path. At the same time, while he was finding his way to accomplish what he needed to do as a Mandalorian, because as they say later, that the Mandalorians and the Jedi are opposites, in the sense that the Jedi renounce attachments, whereas the Mandalorians are all about attachment and tradition. And it's interesting, especially when we get into the legend of the Darksaber in this, how much this has these, Old Testament, prophecy kind of vibes of like, our kingdom was lost because our leaders betrayed the way, because they succumbed to popular gods and popular ideas. We lost what we had because they rejected the way of the Mandalore,
And it's funny, like, he has already rejected the ways of the Mandalore, at least the hardcore Orthodox Mandalores, by taking his helmet off on several occasions. So it already seems like it's moving in that direction. So if somebody unworthy were to get their hands on it, and then if you think about how he actually got the Darksaber, Moff Gideon gave up to play a hand. Like he wasn't bested, right?
I think he was bested. I think if he had forced it, Jindarin would have killed him. I do think that. Although that's an interesting thing that Tristan pointed out, because he wanted to point out that, because we do see that Jindarin is struggling with the blade, and the blade like becoming heavy and falling to the side. And what he actually said was, it seems that the blade is most responsive to people who are of the dark side. And that, as an example, Moff Gideon can wield it. Darth Maul wielded it without any problems in the Clone Saga. That all these beings that were willing to give into their darkness could wield the dark saber just fine. But when Jindarin is trying to use it, and we also saw that when you saw other characters who tried to utilize it in other parts of the lore. And this is a very lore-deep episode. There's a lot of...
Right, but that's a piece of lore that I don't think was a part of canon before ever. That was invented for this show for the first time. So another way to interpret it...
No, this is actually very consistent, going back to other times we've seen the dark saber.
That it's heavy to wield?
That it can be. Because, and the idea is that if you can flow with the crystal... And this is something that the armorer says. If you flow with the crystal,
right? But the armorer said, I mean, like the way I understood it, that it was a thing. But this dynamic about it was something new that they invented here for the show. So the only reason I bring it up is because then the way to interpret it could be that Moff Gideon was able to handle it because he was so adept with it, because he had been practiced with it.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's about being able to let the sword guide you rather than you guide the sword. It's allowing the sword to, direct your attack rather than trying to move it with your muscle. Because as the armorer says, it's not, and it's interesting because it is, again, this very Jedi kind of training. It's like you're trying to move it with your muscles. You have to move it with your mind. You have to, he says, well, practice more. He says, practice without insight will not get you any further. And it's interesting because I do feel like the armorer in this scene, in this whole storyline, is actually presenting a much more nuanced look at their faith and their path than I think people want to give them credit for. Because I do feel that, and it is this, again, there's an aspect of, there's the story of King Solomon and the baby, and the two women claim to be the mother of the child, and King Solomon says, we will cut the baby in half. Each of you will have half. That'll solve the problem. And of course, that's to say, well, no, because obviously whoever says don't cut the baby in half would be the real mother, because,
implying that one of them would be okay with this?
Yeah, well, in the actual story, yeah, that's how it plays out. The Bible's a very simplistically written book. I don't know if you've ever actually read it. It's like, and, literally one of the characters is the devil. So, it's like. Right.
Now, I've heard, the first time I heard this story was like in a story on TV about a bicycle. It might have been the Brady Bunch or something, but they were going to cut the bicycle in half. And one of the kids says, it might have been the Cosby Show, but that's where I encountered this story. Yeah, and it made more sense there. But I get it. Yeah.
It still doesn't make much sense because, no one would want to have a baby. No one's going to want to have a bicycle.
No, but I can see children doing it out of spite, being like, yes. Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah. Now you happy now? Just, yes. That's an emotion I can see.
Yeah. But anyway, the idea is that, you're supposed to understand what you're supposed to understand about the Bible is that it's allegory, not history. And, there's other things that I've often felt about that. Like there's aspects like certain punishments in the Bible where, where it's the responsibility of the parent to effectively stone their child if they are incorrigible. And to me, it's like, yeah, it's easy to read that as, oh, wow, how cruel. You're going to stone this child for being incorrigible. But actually what the point is saying, no, you're going to make this statement that your child cannot be, is dead to you. Then you're going to be the one that have to kill him. You're going to reject this child from society. You have to do it.
Yeah.
You don't come to the rabbi. You don't come to the community and say, please kill my child. You say, no, this is your responsibility. You have to deal with it. And it's the idea that sometimes they're going to tell you something, and then you've got to figure out that, what they're telling me is
it could be written in the vernacular of the times. The times in the Bible was written. There might be millennials, who just had metaphors for everything, and that's just how they talk. When they said stone, that's not what they meant. That was just a metaphor for the time for being, stern with somebody.
Yeah, well, and it could be that too, I mean, that's the thing is like, spare the rod, spoil the child. Are you really hitting your kid with a rod? Probably not, although some people did, so you never know.
Right.
And it all comes into this idea that, that if you're reasonable, that these ideas aren't horrifying. The problem is that always there's that one person that wants to just take it a little too far. And then, that's where you have to have wiser gurus and leaders to walk you through how what you think is the way may not be the way. And I think we get a lot of that in here because we do have Jon Favreau's character who, and again, this is interesting because we do see that as Din Djarin is trying to use the Darksaber, it's not working for him. It is not responsive, and you really feel like he does not even want this thing. Like, this thing is kind of, he's stuck with it, but he also knows he can't just give it up.
Right.
And he has to fight for what he has because he knows if he doesn't fight for it, if he just lets it go, that it's also not going to be what they want. So, and actually, just step back because we get an earlier aspect of this with the Beskar spear. And this, again, is an interesting aspect because, the armorer says, this can pierce our armor. This is a violation of how we do things.
It's a danger to Mandalorians everywhere that this even exists.
Exactly. And they turn it into a gift for the foundling. You don't get to see what that gift is, but it's a traditional Mandalorian foundling gift. If you have a baby, this will be their first gift of Beskar, is the idea that they're going to create for little Grogu.
That's just adorable. I cannot wait.
and to turn the spear,
tiny little rings with it. You're like, it could be like a little chainmail thing. It's going to look amazing.
I know. And the idea that you take this spear and you beat it into a gift for a child, again, turning your spears into plowshares kind of thing. This idea that, the way of the Mandalore maybe is much more of a peaceful path than people think, people want it to be one thing, but actually maybe it has more complexity and more depth to it than people ever acknowledge. I
think it was also interesting, like, Paz Business says, I'm going to fight you right now. And at first I'm thinking, oh, well, this is going to be difficult. And as soon as he grabs it, I was like, wait a second. It's an automatic disadvantage to him. He has never fought with this thing before. And now he's gotta fight Mando with a complete disadvantage because of this. He thinks it's an advantage, but it's a complete, and he just dismantles him so easily and quickly. And it's just like, man, what a dumb idea that was.
Yeah. Well, and actually he doesn't fight him really with the saber, that he actually.
Well, as soon as he picks it up, it's almost like, he was handicapped at that moment.
Yeah. And it is just this idea that, he actually, in the end, he's using just a traditional vibroblade. When Din Djarin actually does, get it on Vizsla, and then the armorer calls it, because obviously not going to lose one of our Mandalorians for this, and does this very interesting thing in that, where basically, and arguably that let them both save face, because she no doubt knows that
he can't ask him to stop.
No, but that Din Djarin probably has had to violate his oaths at some point. That every quest that he came through the quests, and it's sort of the idea of. The idea that if you are starving, you are allowed to break kosher, that, or to save a life, you can break the rules to do what you have to do.
And all those things that he did break were done in service of the way, which was to take care of the foundling. It required it at that moment. So, I think if you really want to be a stickler for dogma, or you want to be sticklers to an ideal that isn't controlled by people, then I think he was in the right.
Well, yeah, and that I think is 100% intended to be the point. That, yes, in the context of someone who had to accomplish what he was obliged to, he had to make certain choices that brought him in conflict with his own oath, such as it is. And I think that is the crux of the problem for him, because and again, in this moment, he is told, the only way to regain face is to
bathe in
go
the waters,
the living waters.
Yeah.
And there's like, but those are destroyed. It's like, yeah, well, you're going to have to figure that out, aren't you? And here's the thing. This is my thing. And oh, by the way, the other interesting aspect of this is Bo-Katan. And this is where that idea of, if you don't take it in battle, it will be a curse upon you. And the idea is that in this moment, in this moment, as she is telling him, and allowing him still to leave with the Darksaber, notably, as she is telling him, the only way to regain your purity, the only way to become a Mandalore again, is to go to the living waters of Mandalore. And when she sends him out to that, I believe she feels he will find the living waters of Mandalore. He will be this one who brings it back, because he is the one who isn't seeking to be the ruler of Mandalore. He is not the one, and although he may have violated his oath at some point, he still knows the importance and the meaning of the oath, and that this is how he is going to bring them back. And that is, I think, the armorer's hope. That is the dream of the armorer. That's my guess on it. We're going to have to see where it goes.
That makes sense to me. But he needs to go out and make the argument, right?
Yeah.
In order for it to be etched into history, so it can be used as precedents to further prove the purpose of the way. This is a pivotal time in their history. It's being written right now. Especially considering the prophecy. So, I think that's her understanding of it. Go now. This has to happen, but you have to go out, and this is your test. Go out and prove yourself. Come back and be the man I know you are.
Yeah, and that is definitely where we're going. And of course, then we get our little A-Team scene, because then he goes back to Tatooine and Mos Espa, I believe. Or is that Mos Eisley? No, that's Mos Eisley, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, Mos Eisley, and we've got that little pre-Empire starfighter from Naboo, which is another great throwback, because that's real old school, and they're basically spent the second half of the episode restoring it. And we see that, that without even going into hyperspace, this thing's sublight engines can just take you out of range, which is great when they get pulled over by the cops again. This guy keeps on getting pulled over by the cops.
And by the same cop. Always has a new partner. That's always very interesting. He's like, I'm tired of this one. Oh, he got in trouble for what? Oh, who saw that coming? New partner for me.
Yeah, well, that's how it goes. And what it is, probably, because he's obviously an older guy, maybe they cycle through, because obviously they're spread thinner, they said that. So it's like, they send a new kid to be with the old guy. He trains him, teaches him the way of the way of their group of the Rangers, and then they go out and they get their own rookie to train, and he gets.
Are we going to report this? Oh, yeah. You want to go back and fill out a bunch of reports?
Yeah. Well, and again, but also because he does know Jindar, and he does know who this guy is, and he does, and he knows, again, because it's the situation where, I got a lot of stuff that tells me you were involved in some shady stuff, but I also know the kind of guy you are. And I'm willing to work with you because of the guy you are, and not necessarily with what I've been told you might have done. Which, again, goes to the entire premise of this idea of what makes the Mandalorian an interesting character because he is this character who is going to be growing beyond his.
And it's also the guy representing the Republic to say, hey, we're not who you might think we are. We can be trusted. We do have the same goals. We are aligned in thinking that we should keep people safe.
Yeah. And that is actually going to be very interesting because I do think that's where this is going to come eventually, is getting the New Republic to back Boba Fett. And just have him say, you need to have order and you need to
back
have
channel access to a different world.
And these Pikes, they are not going to rest. These Pikes are going to, they're not going, they don't recognize the New Republic. They don't recognize anything except where they can,
It's like arming the Mujahideen to get rid of the Russians.
Yeah, as we will see. And that's an interesting idea. We're going to see where it leads. I did love seeing Amy Sedaris back.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have to say, I don't know how much of her scenes were improvised, but I just have to say, that just there were debates online about the furriness of Jawas after that. Just,
I love how proud of their work they were. I mean, they don't really, and I loved her speaking their language. I thought that was so good. Like, it really sounded like their language, like how a human would make those sounds. But what an interesting way to show the different languages people have learned. I thought that was really, really cool.
And that's the thing about it is this is a world that we really haven't gotten to see. Yeah. This is a world where it's this society that relies on itself. And the Jawas.
Somebody else, like another human, speak an alien language like this?
Well, Hutties get sometimes thrown about, especially among the bounty hunters, because the Hutts are always doing that. And usually it's just a word or two, So
right.
When people throw in a Yiddish phrase here and there to spice up their vocabulary, an Italian word here or there.
Gotcha. But I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
The way she communicated with him.
Yes. I think this is one of the few times we've ever seen someone actively have that conversation from a human perspective, speaking that other language. Yeah. And that's what I always say is about the Hutts, is that the Hutts can speak common just fine. They just refuse to, because they're the Hutts, and they're going to speak their language. You better understand it, because if you don't understand what we're saying,
we're not going to dirty our mouths with your foul language.
Exactly.
You're going to speak in the high speech, and we'll hire somebody to translate for you.
Exactly. And he's not going to translate what you say into Hutts, because we speak your language. We know you're a little doggerel. We know what you're saying, but we're not going to speak it to you. That's just not how that's not how Hutts roll. It's very cool, and I like that, and I like the fact that the Jawas are just really industrious, and they take what they can, and they'll go in. They'll cut the cooling system out of a air train, but they're refueling. And it's dang. I guess that's the advantage of being small,
Right, but I guess you can see where they're shooting anything that moves out of those trains.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is the Jawas, they're gonna get you. Jawa's gonna strip you blind if you're lost salvage, man.
And they don't say any words that we can understand, but just their body language. When he says, "Man, he was so impressed with them," they were so proud of themselves. They were so proud of it almost felt like they were proud of their whole entire race, their species. It was yeah, that's what we do. It was adorable.
We'll get the manifold off the car while it's moving, man.
What do you need? Let me know.
We'll find it.
I will find it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like they say, Tatooine's a planet of plenty. There's lots of stuff out there, but you need someone that knows how to find it, and that's what they do in this business. Because obviously, it's covered in a bunch of scrapped up speed racers and pod racers over the years. So, there's lots of stuff that the Jawas have found. And then we see Fennec Shand gets her little. It's funny. It's Tamira Morrison isn't in this episode at all.
Who's that?
That's the guy who plays Boba Fett.
Oh.
Yeah. He's not in this episode.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't in this episode.
Right.
I don't think he's in the next episode either.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he still gets top billing because it is still his film or his movie. But Tamara Morrison. Credit only. Yes, Boba Fett. He doesn't show up in it, and neither does. And I don't think he shows up in the next one either. But that's okay because it's still his. Oh. It's still his movie. You know, that's the idea. It's his movie, and he's just glad to be there.
Just that movie inside a movie.
Yeah. But I'm very. I really like this episode. I think it gave us this great lore about the Mandalorians. Gave us surprisingly great lore about the Jawas. You know, and that's some of the stuff. That's what I like best about this. Is this deeper understanding of who the Jawas are, deeper understanding of who the Tuskens are, you know, all these people who are a part of this story, who were just background characters before, but now they're actually really fleshed out. You know, even the Rancor trainer, you know. Now we find out, oh no, that's a noble profession like lion tamer. You know, that they have their own culture and lore and way that they interact and see their beloved Rancors, you know? And that to me is the best part of this entire series.
Right. All the periphery is getting turned high def.
Exactly. And I think that is where the real beauty of Star Wars always was. No one really cared about you know, the big global battle for, you know, a seat.
That was always the background.
Exactly. You know, and that's the thing. And I think that is because in the same way that the Emperor, it's just who's going to be the guy in the chair. This is like, you know, who's going to sit in Jabba's chair. And Boba's like, I don't even really want the chair, but if someone needs to sit in the chair, I'd be a better person to sit in the chair. And I'm going to sit in the chair in a way that benefits all of us.
Right.
And, it's really cool. It's really exciting how they're doing it. And, you know, I can't wait. Can't wait to see where they go. I think it's really starting to gear up, which I think is how these series always go, is that they're a little slow at start and then they immediately hit their stride.
Yeah. And then maybe we'll finally get some Grogu, which is what everybody really wants. Just give us some Grogu. That's what we want.
We'll see. We'll see next week. We'll see next month or next episode.
Yeah.
Not next month. Next week.
Right.
We will see in the next episode if we get our Grogu back. What's Grogu doing?
Right.
You know.
Not that he needs any armor, but it'd be snazzy.
You know, it'll be neat to see what they do, and you know, like I said, throughout it, the entire story with these characters is fantastic, and I like how they made the point that Bo-Katan was a cautionary tale, because if you leave the way, doesn't matter if you rule Mandalore, it will come to dross because you've left the way, and the only thing that protects the Mandalorians is the way. And they even make the point the only reason we survived was because we were on this moon at the time. So it's a fascinating tale, Mozz. And, you know, Mozz, I'm just going to throw this out here right now. For those who don't know, this show, Full Stream Ahead, is broadcast on the Capes and Lunatics Network. You can see all of our amazing shows on pop culture, including Capes and Lunatics, the flagship podcast, the Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast, Super Connectivity, my own show carried over from the old Nuff Said network, and many other great, fantastic shows. And you can write to all of them with your questions about the latest in pop culture and old culture and anything that we happen to be talking about. You know what? Just write us a random letter. We'll tell you what podcast that'll get read on at capesandlunatics@gmail.com. That's capesandlunatics, all one word, @gmail.com. Of course, call us at 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES to let us know your thoughts on either the Book of Boba Fett or anything going on in the world of comic books and comic book adapted media or some other field entirely. And we will happily play your thoughts on the air. Likewise, we are supporting ourselves right now. And as you know, for those who have ever had to support themselves, that means merchandising. Merchandising. Go to linktr.ee/capes and lunatics. That's Linktree, linktr.ee/capes and lunatics. And there you'll see lots of merch for our stuff, as well as links to our Patreon, where you can, we have merch, where you can subscribe for as little as $1 or as much as you want. Participate in our worst superhero movie of all time brackets for the year. Recently, we just did Howard the Duck versus the Matt Salinger Captain America. If you join us, you can find out which of those two films was worse and see how far it will go up against the likes of Superman 3, Fantastic, Puma Man. Yes, Puma Man is on there as well. Fanforstic too. Yes. So there's
Batman versus Superman is going to be really hard to beat. A, because it's terrible. B, because it's terrible. And C, because it wastes so much of your time to tell you that it's terrible.
Well, people are going to have to tune in to see which ones even made the cut, because you'd be surprised how many bad superhero films there are.
Right, but I think what it has going for it is those movies relatively quickly let you know, oh, this is a bad movie. And they get in, get out, don't waste too much of your time. This does so much of inching closer to the line and teasing you with, oh, this could be good, this could be good, this could be great. Oh, this is terrible. Oh my God, stop. Just please. Oh, when will this end? You know.
Yeah. Can't blame that one on Whedon. All right. Mozz, if people would like to reach out to you and tell you what their thoughts are on the Book of Boba Fett or Batman versus Superman or anything else, how can they find you?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, where our mothers and fathers once did, you can do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitter as I try to live tweet things like Naomi Tuesday nights at 9, or other shows that don't conflict with podcasts. At Charlie Esser, that's CHARLIEESSER. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing.
Thank you, Mozz. And thank you, Tristan.
We had a chorus today.
We had a chorus. All right. All right, you fruity land lovers. Thank you for joining us once again on Full Stream Ahead. Join us next week as we once again sail full stream ahead. Arr.